Just make sure we're in here.
Yeah, there it is. Marcus announcement.
I'm frozen. Okay, so I'm going to go to Zoom here.
Announcements.
I'll mark it as an announcement on here. Hey guys.
Hey everybody.
Just bear with us while we press a few buttons like we have to at the beginning of every one of these.
It's pinned to the top.
Oh, you already pinned it?
Oh, I hear.
Okay, there, turn that volume down.
Okay.
Okay,
so now.
So I gotta put this back.
Yep. And we're gonna share our screen with everybody.
We'll tilt the, there we go.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so welcome guys. Should we give everybody a few minutes just to get in here?
45 seconds until we start.
Okay. We realized as we were setting up, this is our new office, which is in our garage. And we realized that we've got one of those rooms that's a little bit of an optical illusion because the roof slants downwards. So we've got like one of those. Oh, yeah. We've basically got one of those rooms where, you know, you can play with proportions and.
Fitting for a composition workshop.
Kind of is fitting for.
Okay, and are we coming through?
Yeah,
loud and clear for everybody? Okay, so can we share the screen?
We can share a screen.
Can't do anything else.
I'm going to share that.
Keynote.
Share. We go here. Press play. Let me just make sure it's coming through here. We got Indonesia here. We got West Virginia. We got India, Kenya. Wow, we got like a real multicultural crowd here. This is awesome.
Okay. All right. Yes, people are coming through. So let's get started. Welcome everybody.
Please excuse our nasally sounding voices today because we both got really bad colds this week, and both got tested for COVID.
Yeah.
Came back
negative for COVID. Anyways, thanks a lot for being here, guys. This is another free little workshop. This one's on composition. And so this is the second in this series of 4 free workshops that we're doing. So light was 2 weeks ago, right? Today is composition. October 5th is going to be moments and posing. And then on October 17th, that's the Holy Grail, okay, where we put it all together.
You've got like a drip coming from the bottom of your nose.
Do we have a Kleenex?
No, we don't even have any Kleenexes. But
okay, well, we're small, you can't see. So
yeah. So for those of you that are new to this group, there was lots of new people coming in this week. Let's start with a little recap about what these workshops are, and more importantly, what these workshops are not. Okay, it's really important to understand that because these workshops are not about how to use your camera.
Right, you can read your manual for that.
Yeah,
right.
This is not a workshop about how to link your flashes or anything technical like that.
Stuff you can Google.
Stuff you can Google, and it's not a workshop about the latest fads or photography techniques.
Stuff you can find on YouTube.
Yes.
Right?
Now, of course, as photographers, and especially if you're a professional photographer, knowing how to use your camera is very, very important. But that's fairly simple and it's fairly easy. Once you know how to use your camera, you know how to use your camera. And that's not what we're going to be teaching you. That's the craft of photography, right? Yeah, that's the craft of photography. And what we're going to be talking about is something much deeper, which is the art of photography, which is basically the art of seeing, right? How you see the world and uncovering the unique way that you see the world. Yeah, and really, if you think about it, that's why our clients are hiring us, right? It's not for the way that we use our camera, it's for the way that we see the world. Okay, so the stuff that you can't Google how to see. Yes. Well, you can, but you'll probably end up learning more about optometry than about the kind of seeing that we're talking about here. Okay, so the kind of seeing that transforms our photography and also the way that we experience the world. Yeah, and I would say first, it transforms the way we see the world, right? And that which in turn transforms our photography. And well, it transforms so much more. Now, save your questions to the end because we're not moderate. I've got it open. I've got our video open just to make sure it's working, but I am not moderating the chat right now at all. We're just going to go. we're just going to go. If you have any questions, save them till the end.
Or write them down.
Write them down.
Write them down so that you remember them at the end.
Yeah. Okay. So in case you missed the first workshop, it was all about light. And if you haven't watched that yet, I would really recommend you do. It's still in the group. It's on the top under announcements. Because light is sort of paramount. Like we're sort of building, these workshops are building on the concepts that we've already taught before. And of course we had an assignment with this workshop, which was light
optional exercise.
Yeah.
But thank you for everybody who went and did it and shared it. We told you that there would be a prize. And we have selected
some winners.
The winners. I think there's 4. We picked,
I don't know. There was a lot.
4 or 5, but lots of really good examples of what we were talking about there. Light as subject.
Which was going around looking for light, right? Not looking at subjects and scenes, but just looking for light and shadow and using that as the subject in your photograph.
Do you want to show the winners first and then mention the prize? Or okay, so here's the winners.
Okay, so this first one by Demetrius, he gets bonus points because he even got
he did it like while we were still live, right? You can see there. So that's pretty cool. Awesome. But perfect example.
Yeah.
Light and shadow. Okay. Now actually, so Lena, we selected 2 of hers, 2 great examples of highlights.
You only get one prize.
One prize, but 2 great examples here.
This one and then this one, which you just posted yesterday, which is so awesome, right? Like this is just turns that moss and that light and shadow into magic.
Light as subject.
Oh, speaking of
light,
the sun just went behind a cloud. That's okay.
Okay. Next winner. This one's really cool.
Shraddha. I think. Yeah, this one's awesome.
There are subjects like there's a person's arm, right? And there's a spider, but really the subject here is the light and the shadow.
And I kind of really like how you included your hand in this photo as well, coming off the side, holding the iPhone, which I'm assuming you're using to take the picture. Yeah, that's really neat. Stephen.
Great seeing. Simple. Light as subject.
Yeah.
Oh, another one. So
this one's, I love this one. This one's, I want to know what it is. Is it like ice cream? Is it
dripping? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think there's 2 more winners. VJ with this one. Just, I mean, when you get that kind of light, right?
Yeah.
You can't not see it and want to use it.
I love the shadows in this one.
Highlights on shadows, shadows on highlights. Okay, so those winners, we said that there would be a prize, and there is. So each of those photographers have won a $500 scholarship for 2Man U. Okay, so we'll reach out to you and explain how that works after. But and thanks for everybody else who participated, and we will have another challenge at the end of this workshop. Okay? Yes. Do we? Yeah, we do. We will.
Did you think of one?
We'll think of it.
Okay. Okay, so the reason we started with light, obviously, is because the way we see and experience light really does shape our compositions. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So what we're talking about today relates back very much to understanding light and its hidden potential. Right, that idea of exposing for the highlights and every highlight in your frame having a purpose that leads us to compose the way we compose. Right? But not always.
We exposed for the highlights in here before we went live. And now we're
I could just up our
ISO. Wait, I don't want to mess something up.
Let me just hold up. But the sun's going to come back out.
It doesn't matter. We're small on the screen, okay? So yeah, absolutely. Light shapes our compositions, but not always, right? Because in love, war, and composition, there are no rules. Well, there is, right? But thinking about them while shooting a photo is kind of like thinking about the rules of physics while shooting a basketball.
Yeah, and I came across this quote by Henry Cartier-Bresson this week, and it like totally fit this so well, right? Thinking should be done beforehand and afterwards, never while actually taking the photo. Right? Know the rules by all means. Google them, study them, know why they exist, but don't think about them while shooting. Right? Think about them after. Think about them while you're studying your work. Think about them as you're analyzing your work. What works? What doesn't work? Why?
Right? So that you can then go out again and compose without thinking about the
without
rules
thinking about the rules.
while you're
Yeah,
shooting.
you want it to sort of become second nature while you're shooting, not necessarily following the rules, but knowing why they exist and when to
Unconsciously
break them
following
and when to break them.
Yeah, and today, our goal today is not to complicate composition. Okay, our goal is to simplify it. And that's pretty much a theme with everything that we do, whether we're shooting or teaching. And when you strip away all of the technical bullshit, it's really quite simple when it comes to composition. You've only got 3 decisions to make.
Oh, sorry.
I'll do this. Okay. What are you going to shoot? From where? And when?
When are you going to press the shutter?
That's composition. Okay. What you include in your frame, what you exclude from your frame, and how you arrange it inside your frame. So that's what we're going to try to uncover today. What leads us to put our camera where we put it, and what causes us to press the shutter when we press it.
Yeah, and for us, composition, like creativity and composition don't go in the same sentence ever. Our compositions are never about creativity. Oh, I want to do something gimmicky here, or I want to do something that's a really cool composition. Composition for us is simply about problem solving, and that's it. And it's probably important to stress here for those, especially for those of you that are new to this group or new to Lanny and I, have never heard of us before, our approach to wedding photography, because our approach to wedding photography really impacts the way we compose. And outside of portraits, we don't stage or direct anything. Okay, we let reality play out before our eyes, and we document that as best we can. And as a result, we miss a shit ton of stuff, but we don't stage or direct anything. Okay, we're not asking people to do things for us. We're not asking people not to do things for us. Now, I do want to clarify here, though, because we do not call ourselves photojournalists, because we aren't purists with this regard. Okay, we're not telling our clients to do anything or not do anything, but we are not purists in that, we will turn on a light switch if we want to. We will, shut a curtain if we want to, or we might even move a water bottle every once in a while.
Because there are no rules.
Because there are no rules. Yeah. But we're not photojournalists.
Yeah. Okay? And so we're not creating, we're not exercising creativity so much as we're solving problems.
We're solving problems,
right?
And we're reacting to what's happening. Okay, we're observing what's happening and we're reacting to it. And that's really important to know, because other than portraits, which we're going to talk about in the next workshops, our compositions are coming from a place of observation, contemplation, and seeing. Okay, they're not coming from some preconceived idea that we have in our head. We don't pre-visualize these ideas inside our head. It has everything to do with what we're paying attention to and observing and noticing things as they're happening in front of our eyes, right? Noticing the light, noticing where that light is, and most importantly, noticing where that light isn't, right? Noticing what the story is, what supports the story, and what detracts from the story. Right? I find that second thing is what photographers forget about a lot of the times. They've got all the supporting elements, but there's so much in the frame that also detracts from it. Okay, what's interesting? What's distracting? What are the problems and how can I solve them? That's composition in a nutshell.
Yeah. And really, when we boil it down, it is all about problem solving. Okay. Which kind of makes it difficult to teach how we compose, because every composition that we make is composed differently for different reasons. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like this, just so you guys know, this is bullshit, right? The triangles that we like, it gets a lot of attention. It's not bullshit. The triangles are there, but we're not out there analyzing geometry, right? We're not pre-visualizing triangles while we're shooting, right? No. That would be complicated as fuck, right? And so we're not following rules or formulas, so to speak, because we can't afford to overthink it, right? Because if we do, then we can't see. Mm-hmm. And we can't react.
Mm-hmm. So instead of giving you some tips to follow, or rules to break, which is really just rules packaged in a different way. We're going to try and give you something far more powerful, which is 7 questions. Okay, questions to ask yourself while you're composing, questions to ask yourself while you're analyzing your images after the fact.
But especially in the heat of the moment, right? These are questions that you can ask yourself.
Well, no, because we've already said don't think in the heat of the moment. Just
no, I'm saying ask yourself questions.
I'm saying no. I'm saying go with the gut.
Okay, semantics, but
no, because you want to think about this stuff beforehand and afterwards, so that when you're actually shooting, it becomes second nature.
Right, but okay, maybe I'll just speak for myself. I think about these things while shooting. I'm not trying to follow a set rule, but these are questions that I'm actually asking myself.
Yes, these are questions that we ask ourselves in order to figure out how we can arrive at the best composition. And it's not because we're following rules, right? It's because we're asking ourselves these questions. And these questions, just so you know, they don't have correct answers. They don't, right? But just the very act of asking yourselves these questions helps us make more intentional decisions when it comes to composition. So, first question.
Yes, everyone's favorite. Which lens, bro? Because we can't talk about composition without talking about lenses. But we're just going to keep it real simple. Big lenses for portraits, wide lenses for stories, and wedding-scapes, with a lot of exceptions, of course.
Oh yeah, there's exceptions to all these.
But in a nutshell, that's it for us. Now, the reason that we prefer wide lenses for storytelling is because A, we can get closer. B, we can include multiple stories. And C, we can be much more intentional with our compositions, right? Tiny micro adjustments with a wide lens can totally change the contents of your composition. It's like if those girls in the background there, if they move a step or two left or right, I can easily adjust to keep them where I want them in my frame with a wide lens. But with a big lens, you're kind of stuck. Right? You have to move a long ways in order to improve your composition.
Like often a couple meters.
Yeah, which is fine in a portrait situation where you have control over the scene. But for moving moments and layered stories, we like the 16 to 35 millimeter range.
Yeah, we like to be in that range, not necessarily that lens, but within that range.
Right, well, and actually preferably not zoom lenses, okay? Now, the reason being is because zooms give us infinite options, right? With a prime lens, we have one option that we got to make work. And so that limitation frees us from overwhelming possibilities. And so our sense of seeing becomes laser focused into that exact focal length, whatever it is. We start seeing the scenes and the moments as they'll fit within our frame, without even having to look through the viewfinder sometimes, right?
Yeah, if you get to know that focal length.
You can get to know that focal length like the back of your hand, and it becomes like an extension of your eyes. With a zoom, we're a jack of all focal lengths, but with a prime, we can become a master of one, right? You know exactly where to go to fill the frame. So our favorite documentary lenses
and travel
for travel and weddings are the 35 and the 28. Erica usually takes one and I take the other. And not the 1-point shit lenses. Okay, we save those ones for portraits. We're talking the small, like f2.8 lenses. They're lighter, they're faster, they're better for moving moments and layered stories. And when we want to go even wider, we've got our 16 to 35, which we'll usually use at 16 if we're using it. So pick your lens of choice for the job, commit to it, and move on to the next question.
Which is, where can I put my camera that I'm not used to seeing the world, right? And this is a real gift as photographers, is we have the ability to show the world from different perspectives that we're not used to seeing it, right? We're all used to experiencing the world from eye level 2 to 3 meters away, right? From birth, pretty much. But we often call that the dead zone. I mean, the dead zone does have a purpose as well. If there's, if we can fill the frame with the story, if it makes sense to be in the dead zone, but the dead zone is normal, right? So it's normal and it's predictable. So it's how we're all used to seeing the world. So we want to, it can be boring,
often boring,
but not always.
Not always.
There's no rules.
No
right?
rules.
Okay, so we want to get our camera literally outside that box of familiarity whenever possible to get our viewers into an area that's a little bit more unexpected, right? And how do we do that? It's really simple, right? We get high, we get low, we get close, and we get far. And that's often our mantra, especially when we're walking into places where we're feeling really stuck. We'll just say, where can I get high? Where can I get low? Where can I get close? And where can I get far? And it's with deliberate intent and purpose. Right? So why do we get high? Sometimes it's just because we want to give a bird's eye view or a bird's eye perspective of the scene. Right? It can also help simplify the scene, right? Boiling back to that problem solving again. It can solve compositional problems. It can solve clutter. It can solve crowded backgrounds. By lifting the camera up, we can get rid of people. We can simplify the scene down. So we always ask ourselves, what would it look like from up there? And we don't know what it'll look like from up there until we actually physically go up there with our feet and look what it looks like from up there. And balconies can be a great place to get that story from above. And then of course, whenever our humans are facing upwards, we think about going high and shooting down.
Sorry, I thought we missed a photo there.
No, I took one out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So whenever, they're laying down in the bed or they're backwards in some way, we're always thinking about how to get up and shoot downwards. And this again comes down to problem solving, right? This is Ryan Bernizer, busted a move on the dance floor. We want to shoot down onto that action so that we can fill the frame with it. Right? Or when someone's limboing, whenever anybody is limboing, we want to get that camera up and over, right? Or if someone's chugging out of a beer or shotgunning a beer, we want to get that camera up. And it simply comes down to problem solving and how can we tell that story?
And yeah, it usually is problem solving that causes us to do these things, right? It leads our cameras up into these positions because like in this example, no other angle allowed me to get my camera to see what was going on in that mirror, right? And when you're 6'4" and you've got a flip screen, it's pretty easy to have a peek.
Yeah. And often the reason we go high is just because there's really nowhere else to go. Right here, I just really wanted to tell this story of this bathroom experience with this bride, and literally the only place I could go was up on where the kitchen sink was. Right, it was simple problem solving. Not the kitchen sink, the bathroom sink.
I thought you were up on the stall, up on the bathroom stall.
No, because that was in a hotel.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I have been up on a stall before as well.
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
so. Then, of course, the opposite of getting high is to get low. And again, we're doing these things with deliberate intent or purpose. Yeah. Okay. Can I get a worm's eye view? And will it be interesting? And again, it can be a great way to clean up your backgrounds. Like an overcast sky makes a nice, clean background. And ceilings are often much less cluttered than walls. And one of the most common best reasons to go low is when our humans are facing downwards. Okay, opposite, when they look down, we go down.
Which is a lot these days.
Yeah, cell phones, right?
People are like this half their lives.
Reading letters, right? Anytime that the eyes go down,
our cameras go down.
like Joe here, lacing up his shoes. Okay, and so the main reason that I felt inclined to get low here is because whites of eyes, right? We're always looking for those whites of eyes. Where do I need to go to include the eyes? So generally when they're looking down towards their hands, whatever they're doing, it often makes sense to get your camera down low and try to shoot up through their hands into their eyes. Hands and eyes.
Yeah. The
dreaded circle cheers. Where are you going to go, right? Down. Shoot up through the hands. There's really no other angle that works and no other perspective that's really as interesting.
So get high, get low, and then get close, right? Why? I mean, close is probably the one we emphasize the most. And we want to get close because we want to feel it, right? And by close, we don't mean getting in tight with a telephoto lens. We don't mean shooting 20 feet away with a 200 lens and getting in tight on the moment. You can do that, but we mean get physically close with your feet with a wide lens. And that, of course, requires a lot of trust and some bravery and a lot of, client education, which is a whole other workshop for a whole other time. But I'd recommend you start with less scary subjects like your cat or your dog or your kids, right? Getting close is by far the most profoundly impactful way you can improve your photography. Robert Capa said, if your photos aren't good enough, you're not close enough, right? And this is so true of so many photographers. Shooting in the moment instead of at the moment. Right? That's just a change of one word, shooting in the moment instead of at the moment, right? If we're outside, we're shooting at the moment. If we're close, we're shooting in that moment.
In the action.
In the action. And there's a real difference in the resulting photos, right? It makes your viewers feel like they're in the action, which is exactly the goal of every photo we make, right? Our goal is to make the viewer feel as though they were there. And it's pretty hard to do that with a telephone
unless
lens.
You're there.
Exactly. Right? There's no better way to communicate the humanity of the moment
than to get close.
And
of course, now then the opposite is, getting out of the dead zone is we can go far, right? We can pull way back, tell the bigger, wider story of the scene. Now, generally there's two very, very good, but very different reasons for going far. Mm-hmm. One is to tell the story of place, okay, where the location itself essentially becomes a character in the photo.
It becomes a subject, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it's pulling back, to show off the whole dance floor or the venue at dusk. It's one way to make boring cake cutting a little more interesting. Maybe it's pulling back to show off the scenery. Double rainbows, scream, wide, baby, go wide, right?
Well, and it wasn't even that wide. It was just that we were really far away.
Pulling back.
Yeah.
Going far, right? In this case, going far and leaving the shutter open to show off the galaxy, right? Either way, you get the picture, right? The big picture. So that's one good reason to go far, to give your viewers a sense of scale.
Mm-hmm. And then the other reason that we back up and go far is to reveal the scene, to give context to what's happening, right? To layer multiple stories into our frame. And sometimes, like literally, I'll be, shooting bride prep for, so 3 to 4 hours sometimes. And I'll just ask myself, what does it look like if I back all the way up? What does it look like if I back all the way up, include as much of this stuff as I can? Actually, we posted Ian Weldon's work last week for Inspiration Monday. If you haven't seen it, go take a look at it. He's like the master of this, like revealing the whole scene. And it really, really adds to the storytelling, mm-hmm. Right? Knowing that there was a mannequin in the room with the wedding dress next to the room where they were doing the makeup compelled me to pull back and try and get these two stories in one frame. Okay. Same thing here, right? Knowing that there was action happening in both rooms, often at the same time, caused me to pull back and see if I could get both actions at the same time. Right? Or in completely different environments, right? What's happening outside the building, what's happening inside the building. Okay, so high, low, close, far. Just get out of that dead zone of 2 to 3 meters away at eye level.
Okay.
Okay.
So to recap, which lens?
Bro.
Where can I put my camera that I'm not used to experiencing the world? Mm-hmm. High, low, close, far. And then we just got to fill the frame. And so these next two questions help us do that. Yeah. What can I exclude to amplify the story? Simplification through amplification, or amplification through simplification. and what can I include to amplify the story? Okay, and we'll get to that one in a sec. But let's go back. We're going to start with this one. What can I exclude to amplify the story? Okay, so like Erica said, this is about amplification by subtraction, right? Less is more. The more we can remove that which is detracting from the story, the more we can simplify it down to what's interesting, the more impactful our compositions can be. So,
and we never let the truth get in the way of a good story, right? That's something my dad has always said, and that goes for photos and it goes for written stories as well, right? We don't always have to tell the full literal truth with our cameras. There's a time and a place for that, but in this case, anything outside the frame doesn't exist, right? So fill the frame with what's interesting. In this case, the horizon was not interesting. The horizon just gave context, but it didn't give any storytelling potential, and leaving a little bit of mystery also engages the viewers a little bit more. So
same thing here,
here,
right? But again, what's interesting, filling the frame with the water in this case, right? Leaving out the kite, the beach, the shoreline, okay? Leaving that mystery, and that engages the viewer to use their imagination. Here, the groom's writing his vows in this crowded, cluttered hotel room. But when I saw this, the light and shadow on his hands, I asked myself, what can I exclude to amplify the story? And the answer was basically everything. By squaring my camera right up on the marble countertop, I could fill the entire frame with nothing other than that which I found most interesting. Okay. And so then the viewer gets to use their imagination to fill in all the missing information, right? Less is more.
And of course, you're also getting really close here, which is what we talked about. And here we're getting high, right? But the reason we're getting high here is to exclude information. What's the story here? The story is that she's got two very contrasting pairs of shoes. So what can I exclude? I excluded the mountains. I excluded the groom. I excluded pretty much everything to really amplify this story, right? Here again. Right? Just a few examples of this here. Right? Those hands tell this, and those handwritten words tell the story of that mother. In this case, she's just standing listening to the other speeches. We don't need her face to tell about those handwritten words. We're often very aware of hands and simplifying the frame down to hands, or some cases feet, because hands communicate so much emotion, right? Sometimes more emotion than our faces do.
Well, hands and eyes, right? But hands, if you think about it, take up a lot more photo real estate than eyes.
Real estate,
right? So
yeah.
There's a lot of potential there.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're also often drawn to.
Sorry.
Sorry. We're often drawn to using the edges of our frames, right? We want to make the eyes work for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Another example of sort of seeing the story that we're trying to tell here and asking ourselves, what can I exclude to amplify the story?
And the story
Simplify
is
it down.
Struggling with
Trousers.
Suspenders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So while we're always doing this, trying to exclude distractions, we're also trying to include the supporting elements, right?
Which brings us to question 4.
Yeah. What can I include to amplify the story? What's also interesting here? What additional information adds to the story
that we can layer in, right? Here.
Or what other stories can we layer in, right?
Like, for example, here, Lanny's walking through the Blue City with Madeline and Timmy following him, and very intentionally including that window up top, because it adds to the story, shows that this building is lived in by people. Right?
And, what can I, in this example, for example, we're just making portraits here in this tourist spot in the mountains, and there's hordes of tourists around, right? Egging them on. They're taking
who have better camera equipment than we do.
Oh yeah, bigger cameras for sure. And so just asking ourselves that question, can I include these tourists to amplify the story? And the answer was yes. It made for an interesting story there to include them, pulling back.
Yeah.
Right. Portraits too. In this case, this is kind of a moment in between portraits. We're making our way But we're asking ourselves, what can I include to amplify this story? Well, these umbrellas tell the story. Can I include and fill the frame with these awesome?
And of course, that umbrella in the foreground as well simplifies the frame, right? By including that umbrella, we're also excluding all that foreground that would not have any purpose.
Filling the frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bride and groom are about to go exit the church, right? What can we include to give it a little bit more context? Oh, there's this stained glass up on the wall. Okay.
Bride and groom's, their reactions, right? They're priceless. They're reacting to the speech. What can I, is it possible for me to back up and include the father at the podium for context, right?
Yeah, and not including all of it, just including the piece that's necessary, and especially with speeches, and we're back to hands again, and you can see I'm using my hands while talking, but the hand gesture, sometimes a hand gesture is all we need to include to tell that story.
But in terms of, like, in this example, it's a great example of how did we arrive at the position we arrived at with our camera? Those two questions. What can I include? And what can I exclude to amplify this story? And that's what led us to go here and include what we included and exclude what we excluded.
And we're always trying to get that speaker and the reactor in the same frame. That's our ultimate goal with speech shots. It's not always possible,
and it ends up with us having our cameras in all kinds of different places at every different reception because it's all so different, right?
Yeah, and it's a lot of problem solving.
Yeah.
Right? What can I include? What can I exclude? Right? And this boils back down to that highlights that we talked about in the last workshop as well, right? That highlight in the background, the window, there'd be no reason to include that highlight unless there were a silhouette in front of it, something to give it context.
So if there hadn't been a silhouette, Erica would have been working to exclude it. Given the fact that the bridesmaids were getting their makeup done there, she worked to include it. Okay, same here, right?
Again, just a hand is all we need.
Yeah. That shadow, right? Noticing that our flash was causing this shadow, asking ourselves, what can I include? Well, if I include that shadow,
it amplifies the story, right? And it does amplify the story. And again, is light on shadow and shadow on light. Just a few more examples here.
This one's a perfect example of it, right? We've got the speech. We're asking ourselves, what can we include? What supports it? What adds context? Well, can we include the kids and the bride and groom and the speaker for context? Yeah. That's what led us to going where we went with our cameras.
And then waiting for that gesture so that the speaker had context and it wasn't just the back of someone. Okay. Wanting to feature where we were, right? Lanny and the kids walking down a street in India and wanting to feature the environment they were walking through. What can I include? What can I exclude?
Can we fill the frame with just the interesting garbage and animals and me and the kids and exclude the rest? Often that's what's causing us to go where we go during moments is we're trying to fill the frame with the moment, or in this case, moments.
That are happening, right? And this is the same moment, just from a different angle.
Moving with the moments, right? How can I fill the frame here? Groom's putting on his jacket in front of a mirror. What's interesting? Well, the groom's reflection, but also his sparkly jacket. That's what caused me to put the camera where I put it there.
Just a few more examples of including more information to tell the story.
Right? Asking ourselves that question and then taking the camera where the answer draws us.
Right? Where is the story here? Those kids. How can I include those kids in the frame? And it's impossible to do this without first asking ourselves, where is the story? Because there's an obvious story, right? And the stories, especially with weddings, are so almost too obvious that they put the blinders on, right? Especially with first dances. We think the story is the dance, right? But often the story is outside of that tunnel vision we have, right? So we have to constantly be looking around and seeing what other stories are happening in the periphery of the scene that can amplify this story.
And that's really what this question does for us. It helps us notice stuff that we might otherwise not notice. Mm-hmm. Right? Can I include more reactions? Can I put myself in a position? Here, just go back to that one. We've got the chaos on the streets of India here, and that's the story, but it's Is this in Nepal?
Yeah.
Oh, in Nepal, but it's juxtaposed with Madeline's, observing it all and taking it in, right? So how can we fill the frame and layer those stories together?
Yeah. Okay, so we've got the lens. We've got our camera outside that dead zone. We've excluded everything we can to add to that story, right? Addition by subtraction. We've included everything that we can to add to that story.
But we haven't, but we've at least attempted to.
Yeah. And then, sorry, my screen's in here, so I just got to make sure we're on the right slide. And then we ask ourselves, how can we arrange these things in our frame that's visually interesting, right? How can we arrange these items in our frame that makes it visually interesting to look at? So Lanny mentioned this before, but we're always thinking about micro adjustments, especially with those wide angle lenses. If you see Lanny and I shoot, we're never standing static somewhere waiting for something to happen and pressing the shutter. We're often sort of moving around like this, making tiny little micro adjustments so that we can get those storytelling elements in our frame lined up in a way that makes sense.
Because they're moving in real time, right? So we have to respond to that accordingly. And so just highlight some of the things that are causing us to make those micro adjustments, right? Mm-hmm. In this case, we're looking for bubbles around our subjects, right? To avoid separation. So as they're moving, I'm doing the best job I can to try to keep those subjects separated.
And same with the previous photo, right? We're looking for separated silhouettes that aren't overlapping and being cluttered with each other, right? So we're constantly moving to get those bubbles around our subjects and to get those layers clean, right? Even when we're not doing silhouettes, right? We want those layers separated so that we can recognize them as separate storytelling elements.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that we're conscious about while composing, of course, are the edges. We're often using the edges.
Of the frame.
We're looking for clean and simple edges as much as possible. And one little trick that we'll do is we'll literally drag our eyeball corner to corner to corner while composing, looking for clean, simple edges as much as possible.
And again, it boils down to what am I including and what am I excluding?
And if we're including it, sorry.
Yeah. If we're including it, we want the entire thing included. That's not always the case with hands or some storytelling images that are coming in, storytelling elements that are coming in off the side, but like a thing like a picture frame or a chandelier,
the lamp here,
or it needs to look intentional that you've included it. So you have to include the entire thing or none of it at all
in or all out. Yeah. And those bubbles around the heads, right?
Yeah, those separation between those elements.
Moving with the action.
More bubbles.
Yeah.
Right.
So
so the last.
Nope, not the last.
Isn't it? Oh yeah, second.
This is number 6.
Second last. So the second last composition, and this one's not really a question, but we did phrase it as a question.
It is.
Which is, where's the magic? Okay, and this is not something we ask ourselves necessarily, because it's something that you have to observe or something that you have to wait for, right? And this is that undefinable thing that we don't really have control over as a photographer, but we have to be open to receiving it when it does present itself. Right?
Yeah, because all of the other questions do have answers that we have some control over, right?
Element to control over, yeah.
Exactly, we can influence the answers. This question, though, is that undefinable. Being aware of it, though, being aware of the potential for magic, that's something special that we're hoping or willing to line up for us.
Yeah, like basically this is like just praying to photography gods.
Right, and it's being prepared for when that luck strikes, right?
Yeah, and this is what gives those quintessential images their quintessentialness, right? It's that magic element that we're ready for, but that we're not directing.
No, it's out of our control, but it's the kind of question that determines how long we commit to something, right? How much patience we have, right? We're aware of the chances that this is worth it, right?
Yeah. And just a few examples here, right? Like for this shot, for example, oh man, this was a stressful scenario. We were shooting a commercial for Pro Photo, and we were in this area of the Blue City in Jodhpur, India. and there was security guards coming because apparently we weren't supposed to be there, but we didn't know. And we had this crew filming us, and they're like, you got 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes and you got to make a shot right now.
And you got to use a B10 and an A1.
And an A1. And so there was all these things happening, right? Joseph and Devika are standing in the shadow there. And then there's the two guys up on the rooftops that are just have to be included in the frame. But the magic.
And they were just there.
Oh yeah, they were just
there. In fact,
there.
they saw us shooting.
Watching.
And then they tried to.
Can you stop interrupting?
Sorry, I just wanted to.
And then,
anyways,
I was in the flow of my story. And then the magic element that wasn't predictable, but that happened and we were ready for, was that this boy walked through the scene, right? And this boy walked through the scene and he gave that whole part of the photo canvas purpose, right? I mean, it would still be an interesting picture without him, but he brings that special little element in there.
That was the magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here, just shooting details. But we got lucky here, right? The feet walking through the front, kind of being prepared for luck.
Yeah. Here, just stepping outside and seeing that there's a cat. We do get lucky a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Waiting for things to fill in the gaps, believing that things will fill in the gaps.
Mm-hmm. And that luck will strike.
Luck will strike.
Okay.
So last question.
To crop or not to crop? We're talking about composition here. So, we'd be remiss to not talk about cropping, because really, if you think about it, you've kind of got two opportunities to achieve the composition you're trying to achieve. The obvious one is in the field behind the camera,
which is what we want, obviously.
And we're asking ourselves all these questions that help us get the composition as close as possible to what we're going for. But then the second opportunity is when you get home and now you're in the editing room and you've got your scissors, right? So when it comes to cropping our work in post, the goals, the same goals of composition still apply, right? All those questions that we just asked, we'd be asking ourselves the exact same questions when it's time to choose whether or not to do a crop, right? So we're looking at the edges. We're looking for clean and simple edges, right? We're asking ourselves, what adds to this story? What detracts from this story? And that causes us to crop accordingly to try to improve the composition as best we can. So I thought we'd just finish with a few examples of some before and afters. Okay, so you can, just to demonstrate, these are some pretty dramatic examples, so kind of demonstrate the potential, right? The power of a crop. So let's see if this works here. All right, so we've gotten close to crop or not to crop. So by the way, guys, these befores are just straight out of camera, uncropped, raw. And then I'll show you the artisan edit side by side, so you can see the crop that we made. Right? We're pulling out the potential of our file. And in that case, the crop really helps because we're asking ourselves those questions. What's interesting here, right? The fingers, the nails, the eyelashes. What's less interesting, or what can I remove to amplify? Everything else. Okay. If we're not sure whose photo it is, one of the telltale signs is if it's crooked, it's Erica's. So obviously we're going to crop this one. We're going to straighten it, right? So just another example of tweaking the composition.
And you probably already said this, but we're always trying to get it right in the field.
I did already say
this. You did. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So here, we got as close as we were willing to get without breaking our lens here, right? We're at like minimum focusing distance. But we can further amplify it with a crop right in there. I think I got a couple more examples. Okay. Strong, powerful moment. We're filling the frame as best we can with a wide lens. A couple things I'm going to do. I'm going to get rid of the color here. We're going to go black and white. Sorry, guys. Make this about the moment, right? The light and the shadow. And we're going to do a slight crop as well to try to remove distractions. I got one more. Oh yeah. I think so. Is this the last one? Mm-hmm. Right. Seeing that emotion being communicated through those nervous hands, doing the best job we can right there with our camera, and the best job we can right here on my computer. Oh, one more. This one actually didn't require much of a crop.
Well, crop down your ear a little bit,
Yeah,
right?
just a slight one there.
What's telling the story, what's not?
Yeah.
Ears usually don't add to stories. Oh, you
True.
do have another.
Oh, last one. Okay, yeah, the light is really working up for us here. We saw it, we exposed for the highlights, right? But the highlights in the sky are detracting from it, right? So we can amplify this composition by removing the sky, right? Okay, so pick your lens of choice for the job, right? Commit to it, move on to the next question.
Where can I put my camera where I'm not used to seeing the world?
How can I best fill my frame?
If I take his breath, it doesn't mean you can just jump in.
Sorry.
Okay, how can I fill the frame, right? That's what leads us to this next two questions. What can I exclude, right? We often forget about this as photographers. What can I exclude to amplify that story? And what can I include to amplify that story? And of course, how can I arrange those elements in my frame in a visually interesting way that makes sense and is easy to read for the viewer? And then, of course, waiting for that magic.
Waiting, hoping, willing, and
praying,
crop or not to crop.
And then crop or not to crop. So that's just a little quick review about the questions we ask ourselves when composing. And now
asking those 7 questions hopefully can help simplify the art of composition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And hopefully can get us away from, it doesn't mean that we don't follow the rules. Obviously, there's a lot of images that we produce that do follow those rules of composition, but it's not a conscious thinking.
Arriving at, the compositions that end up working, it's not that we've followed rules, it's we've asked those questions, and that's what's led us into compositions that work.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody for showing up here.
Yes. So let's
we're going to do, hang on, before you exit out here. Okay, we're going to do we're going to attempt a Q&A.
It's really tricky, guys, to do Q&As just because the questions come and they go so quickly on the comments here. But if you start But
before we do the Q&A, because sorry guys, before we do the Q&A, just to let you know, for anybody who's taken off now, that we are going to do the 3rd free workshop on October 5th. Okay, and we're going to focus, it's kind of 2 in 1. We're going to focus on moments and posing.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm going to escape out of this.
You can skip out of that
and stop share. So if you have a question, you can type it in the comment. I might see it, I might not. But if you start your question with a great big Q, it'll make it much easier for me to see. So start it with a Q, and I'll take a look at the screen over here, but they come in so quickly and then they disappear so quickly.
I'm going to have them here too. So if we're able to catch a question.
Abby, why no cocktail in hand? Well, you heard the cough. That's probably why.
Plus it's 10 in the morning.
Okay, Diana, do you deliver your images in 3:2 ratio, or do you sometimes crop in other ways for albums and prints? So Diana, we generally keep to, it's Diana from my creative workshop. She was in the Seth Goen workshop with me. We generally keep to 2:3 ratio for pretty much anything. And again, that just boils down to simplification for us. Like, how do I fit this scene within a 2:3 frame? It's the same reason we use prime lenses. Like we want to simplify our choices. If we have an infinite number of choices of crops, it just muddles our thinking.
It's part of the art of what we're doing as photographers with our cameras, and same with the editing, is we're trying to make it work within that 2:3 rectangle.
That's not to say that we, especially for albums, for clients, sometimes I do end up cropping the images. But if you look through our website and you look through our blogs, they're all 2:3, and they're usually, like I'd say 99% of them are horizontal as well. Okay,
I got a 3-part question here. Question 1, how do you plan for and manage the lighting when you are so low and or close to the subject? Okay, well, first of all, it's no different whether we're high, low, close, or far in terms of how we manage the lighting, whether or not we're talking natural ambient light or we're talking manufactured light. And that's a whole other workshop, okay? And we will touch on it a little bit when we get to the fourth free workshop, that Holy Grail one. We're trying to put all these elements together, light, composition, and moment. It's craft and it's art. Okay, that's a very big question. Question 2, in the far shots, how far are you generally, especially in the mountain landscape pics? Well, generally, most of those are the wider lenses. When we do those kind of wedding scape type photos, it tends to be with our 35 or 16 to 35. So we're actually not that far, even though it gives you a sense of being far. We might only be 10 or 20 meters from our subjects. We're totally within communication distance for the most part.
Yeah. Otherwise, we just use sign language, or we'll call them on the cell phone.
And then question 3, how do you prevent distortion of subjects, especially towards the edges in very wide and close-up shots? Well, we sorry guys.
Stop giving me a dirty look. I can't.
No, it just goes right into the mic, so they can't.
What do you want me to do?
Well, we don't. That's the inherent nature of a wide lens, and it can work for you or against you. As you start to get wider than 35, distortion around the periphery can become an issue. But in those situations, we're careful to put what's important, the moment, subject, in the middle of the frame. And then the periphery tends to be things that can afford to be distorted. Like on the dance floor, for example, we like those distorted edges with the hands and the arms, as long as we've got the important stuff in the center.
Yeah. Okay, here's a really good question, actually. How do you avoid impacting the moment when you're up close? And we talk a lot about this in our workshop, actually, because this is a very good question. It's hard to answer short in this little workshop, but basically it all boils down to client education and being there. And the best way for us to be invisible is to always be there, right? And our clients expect this. We don't hide anything about our approach before they actually hire us. So they know what to expect. But of course, their wedding party might not know what to expect, or their parents or their grandparents. And basically we are just there all the time so that we're invisible.
And we're also not directing all the time, which is another key piece.
We're not directing at all.
No, other than portraits. But when it's just the rest of the wedding, it is their wedding. It's not our photo shoot. And so they're never looking to us for direction. And so as a result, they acclimatize to us just always being there and forgetting about us. And so that's part of it too.
Yeah.
We will. Oh, I lost the questions.
Here, I've got some here.
We will touch on that in the moments.
We'll do 3 more questions. So this is another really good one. Do you sacrifice the safe shots for the more interesting shots? So this is what I would ask you, Chris. Question is from Chris, is why does more interesting not mean safe? Okay, so I feel like we as photographers, especially wedding photographers, because we all get sort of put into this box, like we need the safe shot of the dress hanging in the tree, and we need the safe shot of grandma and the bride together pinning on their corsage, right? But safe does not have to mean boring, right? And if you look through an entire contact sheet of ours, all of our shots are pretty safe. We're documenting what's happening before our eyes. There's nothing unsafe about it. It's just that it's a little less traditional. It's a little less posed, and it's a little less formulaic than a lot of wedding photography that you might see out there. So change your definition of what safe is, and really question yourself on that, because I feel like we put these boxes around ourselves as wedding photographers for no good reason at all. Right? So just question what is safe and what's not safe and why.
Any more? Here's a common question. As a single photographer, how can I manage to take close and far shots for the same moment? Well, you can't, as a single photographer, it's physically impossible to take a close shot and a far shot of the same moment at the same time. And I would say it's very rare, very, very rare, like less than 1% of the time that Eric and I are ever shooting the same moment from an in-close perspective and a far away perspective. At our weddings for, sometimes half of the day, the entire morning, we're just on our own anyways. It's me and the guys, Eric and the girls. So we're just operating as solo photographers. But even when we come together and work as a team for the rest of the day, we're rarely shooting the same moment at the same time. We're often dividing and conquering in the sense that there are moments all over the place. So it's not just a matter of, okay, here is the one moment and we're going to shoot it from 2 different perspectives. there's often another moment that the other photographer could focus on. So I would say as a single photographer, it's, as always, it's a matter of asking yourselves those questions, which helps draw you into the places that make sense for you to go with your camera. What's interesting here? What's the story? How can I get my camera outside of the dead zone, right? And then how can I exclude what's distracting and include what's most interesting here, right? And not to complicate it and get distracted by a million other things you could be doing, a million other moments and a million other perspectives. Ask yourselves those questions, and that'll help narrow you into the one thing that you should do at that moment, right?
Okay, I think that's probably.
Any other good ones? Big ones?
We've got the distracting. How do you break down barriers with clients? We kind of answered that as quickly as we can. Like there is, I'm not sure if it's still in here, but there was a free workshop in here called Gaining Your Client's Trust. You might want
no,
to
it's gone.
Or is it gone?
Yeah, we had some common questions about that. I'll just let you guys know kind of how it works. Is we'll leave this in the group, in the community here for you, for people who missed it, couldn't watch it live, so you can watch the replay. Like the previous one is still here, but they don't live here forever. But the ones that are still here, if you go to guides, go into the group, go up and click on guides, there are still a few old ones that haven't been removed yet.
Yeah, this might be a good one to finish off on because we are actually going to talk about this later.
Okay,
so Blake Thomas, how do you prepare mentally when approaching a wedding? And this is a really good question. And it's like literally a full day on our workshops. Like it literally takes us 8 hours to talk about. And it's our favorite thing to talk about, really.
Because it's one of the most impactful, transformative topics. The thing that influences our work and our performance as photographers more than anything is that exact question.
Yeah. So, and how do we get into that mindset? And I think we haven't made it yet, but I think that's probably the direction that we're going to take with the 4th free workshop, which is how to get all 3 things in one frame: light, composition, and moment.
Holy Grail.
That holy grail. Once you know how to use your camera, it has very little to do with what you're doing with your camera. And it has everything to do with your mental fitness, right? Everything to do with what's going on in your head and your ability to stay present. And so I can't give you a formula on how to be in the right headspace, but I can tell you that it is a lifelong journey and it's a lifelong struggle. It's never like a place you would arrive at where you're like, okay, I'm a good wedding photographer with a good headspace now. So
there are a lot of very sort of insightful things that you can do and think about to aid you on that journey.
Yeah. And so we are gonna talk about in that 4th workshop. So make sure you tune in for that one. It's probably gonna be our favorite. So
okay. So we said we would do another exercise, optional exercise, but again, we will have a prize. And we'll start another thread in the group where you can share your results. And I think what we're going to do is within the thread, we want you to share 4 photos, okay, of the same subject, thing, moment, whatever it is, the same thing, but we want you to show it from high, from low, from close, and from far.
And with those things, what am I including and what am I excluding? So even when you're shooting far away, what are you including? What are you excluding, right? It's not just a high, low, close, far. Like you have to really sort of put the blinders on. And we don't need photos of people. You could do it of a garage if you want. You could do it of a dumpster. You could just a high, low, close, far of one subject or one human.
Yeah, and just like the light as subject exercise, this isn't about creating amazing results, right? It's the exercise of consciously asking yourselves those questions to develop that awareness.
And again, you're not going to go out and take pictures right away. Hopefully you're going to go out and observe first, and then you can transfer that to your 2x3 frame.
Okay.
All right.
And congratulations to the winners of the last one. We'll reach out to you. Thank you everybody for showing up here, and we'll see you back here for the next one, which is the Moments in Posing on October 5th.
Yeah. And
we'll try to hop into the chat and address any of the questions that we didn't have a chance to get to here. Okay. Thanks everybody. Have a great day out there. Bye-bye.